Hi there. My name is Stephanie Harris, and I am the Victim Services Lead at the Community Safety Coordination Center at the Chicago Department of Public Health. And with me today, I am so excited to introduce my amazing colleague, Maria Pike, who is a survivor of gun violence and just a fierce and dynamic advocate, advocating on a national, city, and state level for gun violence survivors all across this nation. But Maria, I will let you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your story, and just your advocacy in the space of gun violence survivors.
Thank you, Stephanie. My journey began August 3rd, 2012, when my son was killed in Logan Square while trying to park. And 13 years later, I'm still standing, and I'm going to keep fighting for the rights of victims and the families of victims of homicide and gun violence. When I started this journey, I was knocking on doors. I was reading the newspaper and newspapers and going to churches and everything. And I found out that there is so much to be said about the way our communities have been disenfranchised, and also that there is a space between offenders and perpetrators where we can find commonalities and work towards peace in our communities. So it has been a long road. First, I was concentrated on gun violence itself, but you cannot do that in cities like Chicago, right? Because it starts with poverty and then the disenfranchisement, towards those communities that are poor. And then we find out that the space where guns live are spaces where there is a lot of need for solving our societal issues, and also spaces where the people, the families need to protect themselves. So being a member of Moms Demand Action and the Everytown Survivor Network, I do not advocate for people not having guns at all. I mean, everybody has the right to have them, and but they have to be responsible with them. And that's what is most important. And we also must approach the issue of criminality and with fair access to services that our leaders have not been providing. So we have made a bunch of CVI just came up. Violence interruption really started recently. I would say maybe 8 years ago. So it's a very recent proposition, and we have been working with churches, with CBOs, and even individuals, mom and pop kind of operations, trying to get together and simplify our services to the community. And that's one thing that we have and we have been having issues with, right? Because everybody wants to stay in their lane, and we're fighting for the same resources. Mm-hmm. But in order to service our community best, we actually need to become more efficient in the way we deliver those services.
Absolutely. And just thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for how you show up in this space and your advocacy for survivors of violence. And just thank you for all the work that you do. Another way that you and I work together is through the city's Gun Violence Survivors Leadership Network. And this is a network comprised of leaders throughout the city of Chicago who are also gun violence survivors, whether they've lost a child, a sibling, another relative. They are gun violence survivors who are leaders, whether they have their own organizations or just leading efforts to support gun violence survivors across the city. And Maria, can you speak to and you're actually the first, if you recall, the first member of the Gun Violence Survivors Leadership Network after we worked together, convening around victim services advisors, trying to come up with ways that the city can support just the space of victim services just in general. I remember came up with this idea or this really commitment and initiative to really start this group. Yeah, so just if you can just talk a little bit about your experience with Gun Violence Leadership Network so far and just the value of something of this nature.
Oh, absolutely. I have to be so grateful for your participation in this, because what you have done is incredible. When we started, I remember we were discussing the issue, who's going to be leading, right? And we talked about it, and the thought was, it has to be leaderless, right? We all need to contribute, and that will actually simplify things, because a lot of our members are from all across Chicago. When they were chosen because they were leaders. They were working, active proponents and supporters of other victims of homicide and gun violence. So when they all came together from different parts of the city, then we would have a common thoughts, right? And we didn't want to have meetings, for instance, with CPD, where we would all be confrontational and we would not listen to each other. We wanted to find a space where we could begin acquiring the trust that is necessary to move our issues forward. And that happened. We were able to, through, our growth, we were able to communicate and get things done. And CPD was very receptive to what we had to say. And it was all because we talked to each other. We listened to each other, and we took responsibility for each other's missteps, because there's no one side. There's always two sides, and when we talk the truth, and I think there are doors open wider.
Absolutely.
So I'm very, very thrilled about what we have been doing all these years, and in terms of CPD, also education. In terms of education for our community, with CPD, we were able to work on so many issues. Like, for instance, when they created the Family Liaison Office, they said that all cases which are called cold cases. That they would be brought forward, and the family liaison officer was going to communicate with the office, or the cold case office division, right? But there was no language, right, on the
special order.
The special order had no language whatsoever for how this was going to work between the families, the family liaison office, and the cold case unit. So we were able to work on that to make sure that this effort stays forever. And, the family liaison office has been developing, because it's a brand new division. And, we understand now how we can work with them. And it's an ongoing thing. We will keep trying to, make sure that we all understand where we are and what kind of help we can bring to each other. They are very active right now. They have a lot of events happening, because they want not only our community of survivors, but the community in general, to understand what their role is and how much the work they're doing. So that's fantastic. And we keep going, because nothing is perfect, so we will keep working on it. And the other one that we had worked on also was the educational part of, we have a lot of survivors and families who really are, they are the credible messengers. And many times they have to go out of, they are so distressed, and this pain, this grief is so much that they want to change course. They either get fired, or they leave their jobs, or there's a lot of things, they self-medicate. There are a lot of things that happen with grief that we're trying to address. But one of them is that this is an opportunity for them to start over, to grow after the whatever happened to them. And we also have a need for people who are empathetic enough to take the hand of a new survivor and walk them through the path that they need to walk through, and bring them resources. And that's when we decided that we needed to have certifications for this kind of population, and others, of course. But this certainly is a perfect situation for someone who wants to give to the community. Many survivors that I know, they want to give to the community, and they don't want this, whatever happened to us, to happen to them. So they are willing to step up and work, but obviously there is a need to earn an income, right?
Absolutely.
So certification was the right path. You guys developed the curriculum. We had the pilot project a couple of months ago now, right? So it was the first one, and it was extremely successful. And it opened also the doors for community members to participate, organizations to participate with each other and get that efficiency that we need.
Absolutely.
Right, so it was a win-win situation.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that.
Well, first, thank you so much, Maria. First of all, I just want to thank you and the other members of the Gun Violence Survivors Leadership Network, and just survivors that I have been working with over the years. Thank you for allowing me in your space. Is something that I take very seriously, and I'm just deeply honored to be in this work with you and so many others. And so I just wanted to say that you talked about just a lot of great work and priorities, whether it's advocacy, having engaging conversations with CPD as they work on ways to support gun violence survivors really of violence across the city. So definitely have worked on some really great things in that space. And then when it comes to victim advocate training, thanks to you and so many others in the space, it was really critical to get the feedback of survivors of violence who would be impacted by incidents of violence and would be able to provide great feedback to victim advocates who are responding to these incidents of violence and providing immediate and long-term supports to those who are impacted. And so being able to have not only the survivor's voice in the room during the pilot training, as well as victim advocates in the room really to give feedback during, we had a really small pilot last year focusing on being able to co-create a curriculum that ultimately will be a city standard training for victim advocates across the city who are working in the community violence space. And so just really grateful to just seeing all of the collaboration, all of the thought partnership, all of the empathy and the passion. It really speaks to just really the value of intentional collaboration and working together. You talk about that a lot, about unity, and we were just having a conversation about that earlier with something else, and just the importance of collaboration in this space. So just kind of a broader question, but just, everything that we talked about, really at the core of it is collaboration. It's intentional collaboration, trauma-informed collaboration. So if you can just speak a little bit about just overall that value and how it has served in this space so far.
Well, as I mentioned before, we all were fighting for the same resources in our lanes and not collaborating with each other, and that made things very difficult for the recipients themselves. Mm-hmm. So, and that happened on CVI, and that happened with other spaces, And right now, in the space where we are at, we have been able to make the connections not only with gun violence itself or homicides, but also domestic violence, also mental health.
Yes,
and so in we've never. I think that was one of the first times that where we connected was at the training, where domestic violence was and NAMI they came up front, and there was so much. In common that we had.
Yes.
At the end of the day, our roster through like I am on the board of Chicago Survivors, and our roster of victims, they don't have, to us, they're victims. They are not, this person from this area, from this race, from this religion or whatever. But what we do know is that we have many cases where domestic violence has a big role in these deaths, where you can recover from. So I see the light in the tunnel because we are starting to understand. We're no longer on guard about, you're going to take my space, you're going to take my numbers away, and all of that. That does exist, but the bottom line is, who are you serving? You may be paid for this job, but it's humans that you are serving, and you have to have enough empathy to understand that it doesn't matter if you are going to have to refer your client to another organization. What matters is the end result. Will this family be healthy enough to move forward? Will this family, grief doesn't end, but we learn to build around it, and also emerge from post-traumatic events. And that's what we all want. And we also realize, once we start working together, that there is a lot of efficiencies there. So I wouldn't have to reproduce the work of someone else when that someone else can do so. And that would liberate us to do other things for our clients.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I see the light there, because now that we're having, we're going to have a lot of funding cut. And has been already cut, and that meant to me there are going to be fist fights over funding, right? But I don't think that's going to be the case with many of these organizations. I think we're going to find ways to survive.
Yes.
And what somebody said, and at a place where I was last night, they talked about magic, right? She was talking about they have relatives, grandparents who came to America, and they were very, very much vetted. They were Europeans, and they hardly survived. And the way they dealt with war and being unwanted immigrants was that for some reason, they became magicians. And they cope with their grief and their trauma and their PTSD by being magicians.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that we can create that magic, right? That we can actually, with all this pain that we're seeing ahead of us, that we can create the magic in which we can still work with each other, still trust each other, still be transparent with each other. I believe strongly about that, because once you see, when you're in this space, your empathy level grows. If you are a member of the survivor population, then it already grows and keeps growing. So I am hopeful.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. I am also hopeful. And just thank you for sharing. I think in this time of just so much change and just things moving rapidly and just a lot going on, I think that message of magic, of hope, of collaboration is definitely will resonate with a lot of people. I think you're speaking to the hearts of a lot of people, not only in our space, but also just in general. I think just overall, with everything going on, people just want peace and to interact and to co-create in a harmonious way. I think broadly that is what people want when you get to the core of things. And just as you mentioned, the coordination, the collaboration, the seeing the humanness and the humanity in those that we are serving, and knowing that, this is not just to fulfill a report.
Correct.
Or to say, okay, I did this first, or let's check off this box, or these are the numbers that are going to sustain funding, but really seeing the human element in communities who are impacted by violence, and those who need love and support on their journey. And so I think that message and what you just shared is really reflects the consciousness that is within our community violence intervention and prevention community, the victim services, survivor support space, all of just the various partners and folks that are helping to move this work along. And so your message is one that I receive, and I thank you for being able to kind of share that perspective publicly, because it's much needed. And I'm hoping that this will be an encourager to those who may just not really know what to expect or what's coming down the road. And yeah, just really looking forward to continuing to co-create with you and others in this space, because unity, collaboration, it's going to get us very, very far. So,
yes.
Absolutely.
If I may mention,
Sure.
the Community Safety Coordination Center was a brilliant idea. I cannot be more grateful, because you have been able to get hundreds and hundreds of people engaged all this time, and have been able to, make sure that they connect with each other. And that is something that is very hard to do. Only if you trust the person that is sending the message will that happen. Mm-hmm. And I have to thank you, especially Stephanie, because you have an open heart and people see it. And people know that you are an honest person and a transparent one. So thank you for all your work.
Oh, thank you. I come from I think my dominant frequency is just love. I mean, that's just who I am. That's who I've chosen to be. That is how I'm designed. And so it just comes out, in my interactions with people, wanting to learn. I would say my greatest advice to anyone in this space, or just really any space, is to listen. Because through listening, you can uncover so much. Communication is so important. But just to listen, and literally, when you think about the programs and the initiatives that have come out of this work, whether it be the Community Safety Coordination Center or other efforts from others, it really, at the core of it, was people listen to have a conversation. People listen to what the pain points and the challenges are, what the priorities should be, and we're working to co-create solutions. Learning through the process is not easy, especially when you're doing something that is unprecedented and also just transformative. It is, breaking down maybe older systems, shifting paradigms, breaking down silos, at least to this extent that we can. It's never easy, and you just got to keep going. But I absolutely appreciate, and I'm honored. This is what I call purpose, and I'm grateful that I get to walk in purpose every day in this work alongside you and so many others.
Thank you. Yeah, so and you're right. Paradigm shifting takes courage
and time,
but mostly courage.
Yeah.
You can't give up.
Yeah. No, you cannot. You cannot give up. I think we can kind of look at what's ahead. I know you spoke a lot about, or at least in the your last message was really about what to expect in the future, and that is a lot of unity and collaboration, more so than the opposite of that. And so when it comes to what you hope to see in terms of collaboration, or whether it be investments, just to broaden this space and broaden the support in this space, what are some things that come to mind for you?
Well, before we were properly funded, which was during Biden's administration, there were a lot of mom and pop operations that received $0, basically, and nonprofits who did almost the same. And then the good times came, and everybody was being funded. We're going back into that past, I'm sure. But we have the element of time where we have been able to engage with each other, not everybody and everyone, but we have created those bridges already. And I hope that we continue to work together, whether we have, money for the water or not, that because we have been able to see each other's humanity. I want to see the same people who have humbly been working all these years and decades, like Iman, New Life Centers, like Precious Blood, and organizations like that who work for the whole community, and they are very much trusted, right? So we're just going to have to do what we have to do, but always remembering that we are enough in terms of our humanity.
That you are enough. If no one has told you today, you are enough, and we are enough, and we have what it takes. Really, it's just really a matter of a choice. We have to choose to collaborate. We have to choose to see the humanity in others. We have to choose to show and embody love. And with that, we can definitely make great progress and strides. And there's been so much progress over the years. I know, as you have seen, looking back years ago, and looking at now,
Yeah, there is a big difference between,
Yeah.
What I saw 13 years ago and what I see now. And the involvement, it's always, no community will thrive if the people who live in there do not buy in. And so I think that there has been some time to create that trust, and it will remain the same, I believe, when the funding goes away or other organizations close down, because those are families who live there.
Yeah.
Those are mom and pop who believe in their communities, who love their communities. In Englewood, I know so many of them, and many of them are doing great things now. But when I met them, they were at a very grassroots level. And so the same feeling goes to the west side, on the southwest side. Organizations like Padres Angeles never got a penny, but still there, and they're strong and they're trusted, and they're and they're very much loved in the community.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you talk about smaller mom and pop grassroots organizations. Definitely, I think this is a great time to really think of non-traditional funding pathways, whether it be smaller grants, whether it be seed grants.
Yeah.
Alongside there are the larger grants, the RFPs, and the notice of funding opportunities that you see coming out. But where can some smaller investments and I'd be very interested to see, how that develops, and we'll continue to advocate for smaller investment seed grants for smaller organizations that are out here doing the work alongside everyone else that deserve a seat at the table.
Absolutely. The smaller mom and pop operations are actually very important because the efficiency with which they work, in terms of, for $1 that is given, they actually create $1.50, because their interest is the people they are serving. It's not getting enough money to provide whatever service they're giving. It comes from their heart. Cooking. You're not paying them to cook for a repast, for instance, but they're cooking, and they get a donation for the chicken or the wings or whatever it is, right? And then they take it over there. Nobody's paying them for that. They're doing it because it comes from their heart.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Maria, I can talk to you for several more hours, as we sometimes do. I want to thank you so much again just for sharing your story, your perspective. It has been an honor and a pleasure, and I'm excited to continue in this space with you. But before we go, just wanted to just see if there was anything you wanted to share, or just anything you wanted to lift up for those who are tuning in before we end.
Well, I know so many. I'm a member of several organizations. I'm on the board of Chicago Survivors, and they take care of, in crisis response, around 500 families, about 300 families that receive wraparound services. And I wanted to highlight that, as well as organizations who deal in the arts, because arts is important for the growth of our youth. And by that I mean collaboration, as well as the Newtown Action Alliance, who works at the federal level right now, and that's a humongous amount of work and dedication. All of them, they don't get paid. They do it because it's the right thing to do. Also, we have Growing Greater Englewood. I loved the steward, Anton Sales. He is an amazing, amazing steward. In Teamwork Englewood, Rage.
Yes.
I already mentioned Iman and Growing Home. There's so many organizations
Yes.
that I'm so impressed by. Israel Gifts of Hope, Padres Angeles. They all deserve kudos. If you
Yes.
see them and talk to them, say thank you, because
Yes.
everything they do comes from the heart, their lived experience, and their love of community.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. Thank you so much, Maria. And thank you to all of the partners, all of the supporters, all of the people in this space, helping to support our communities and just provides resources and love. And with that, that is another episode of the Healthy Chicago podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.